Today, we're tackling a question almost everyone has asked themselves at some point, usually right after checking their bank balance. Does money actually buy happiness? You've probably heard both sides shouted at you your whole life. Money can't buy happiness. Anyone who says money can't buy happiness has never been broke. Both of these get repeated so often, they've basically become background noise, which means most of us have never actually stopped to think about what's true, what's exaggerated, and what's just more complicated than a slogan can capture. So today, we're going to actually dig into it. What does money really do for your happiness? Where does it stop helping? And how can you use the money you already have, whatever amount that is, in a way that actually makes your life better, instead of just bigger? Let's get into it. Let's start with the honest, slightly unsatisfying answer. Yes, but with a very important asterisk. Think about what it's like to not have enough money, not being able to pay rent on time, avoiding the dentist because you can't afford it, constantly doing mental math at the grocery store, lying awake doing anxious math about bills. That kind of financial stress doesn't just feel bad in the moment. It bleeds into everything. Your sleep, your relationships, your ability to focus, your patience with the people you love. Financial insecurity is one of the most consistent predictors of chronic stress that researchers have found. So in that sense, yes, money absolutely buys happiness because it removes a constant, grinding source of suffering. Having enough money to cover your basic needs without panic is genuinely, measurably linked to higher well-being. That part isn't controversial at all. The interesting part, and the part that surprises people, is what happens once your basic needs are covered. For decades, the dominant idea in psychology was that money keeps making you happier up to a certain point, and then it basically flatlines. Earn more after that point, and your day-to-day happiness barely budges. More recent research has actually pushed back on that a bit, suggesting that for a lot of people, happiness keeps rising with income even well beyond that flatline point, just more slowly and with diminishing returns. But here's the twist that researchers found when they dug even deeper. That pattern doesn't hold for everyone. For a meaningful chunk of people, roughly 1 in 5 in some of this research, happiness actually does plateau or even dip once money stops being the main source of life's problems. For that group, more income stopped translating into more joy, because whatever was making them unhappy wasn't a money problem to begin with. That distinction is everything. Money fixes money problems. It does not fix relationship problems, purpose problems, health problems, or loneliness. And a lot of us, once our money problems get smaller, just discover the other problems were sitting there underneath the whole time. Let's give money its due credit, because it's earned some. First, it buys you a reduction in chronic stress. This is the big one. Financial security means fewer 2 a.m. moments staring at the ceiling doing anxious math. That alone is worth a lot. Chronic stress doesn't just make you miserable, it actually affects your physical health over time, your sleep quality, even your immune system. Second, it buys you freedom and choices. Money expands your options. It's the difference between staying in a job you hate because you can't afford to leave and having the breathing room to look for something better. It's the difference between canceling a trip because of cost and actually going. Freedom, the ability to say yes or no to things based on what you actually want, instead of what your bank account forces you into, is one of the most reliable links to genuine well-being that researchers keep finding. Third, it buys you time. This one gets overlooked constantly. Money can buy you out of chores and tasks you hate: cleaning, commuting, cooking when you're exhausted, waiting in lines. Multiple studies have found that people who spend money specifically to free up time, rather than spending only on more stuff, report meaningfully higher life satisfaction. Time, it turns out, might be an even better predictor of happiness than money itself. Money is just one of the tools that can buy you more of it. Fourth, it buys you a buffer. A financial cushion means an unexpected car repair or medical bill is an inconvenience instead of a catastrophe. That buffer, even a relatively modest one, does enormous psychological work. It's not about being rich, it's about not living one bad week away from disaster. So no, money isn't fake when it comes to happiness. It's doing real, important work. The mistake is assuming it can keep doing that work indefinitely, no matter how much of it you pile on. Here's where things get interesting, and where a lot of people get stuck without realizing it. There's a concept psychologists call hedonic adaptation. Basically, our happiness resets to a baseline after almost any positive change, including a raise. You get a salary bump, you feel great for a few weeks, maybe a couple of months. Then your spending quietly rises to match it. A slightly nicer apartment, a slightly nicer car, slightly more expensive habits, and your happiness drifts right back down to roughly where it was before. This is often called lifestyle creep, and it's sneaky precisely because each individual upgrade feels reasonable and earned in the moment. The problem isn't that nicer things are bad. The problem is that we keep using money to chase the same trick over and over, expecting a different result. When the research keeps showing the same outcome, each new comfort gets normalized faster than we expect, and the baseline just resets again. There's also a comparison trap. Happiness research consistently shows that how we feel about our money is shaped less by the actual number and more by who we're comparing ourselves to. Someone earning a comfortable salary surrounded by people earning far more often feels worse off than someone earning less, surrounded by people earning roughly the same. Social media has made this dramatically worse because we're now comparing our actual full lives, including the boring and difficult parts, to other people's carefully curated highlight reels. That comparison is rigged from the start, and no amount of income fixes a problem rooted in comparison. And finally, there's the issue we touched on earlier. Money simply doesn't address non-financial sources of unhappiness. If you're lonely, no amount of income buys you a close friendship. If your job feels meaningless, a bigger salary might make the meaninglessness more comfortable, but it doesn't make it meaningful. If a relationship is struggling, money can reduce one source of conflict, financial stress, but it can't manufacture trust or connection out of nothing. Money is extremely good at solving money problems and almost completely useless at solving everything else. Let me paint two quick pictures, because abstract research is easier to feel through an example. Picture someone who just got a big promotion. For the first few weeks, everything feels amazing. New title, new salary, new sense of accomplishment. But within a few months, they've moved to a nicer apartment that costs more, started eating out more often because they can afford it now, and somehow, despite earning significantly more, they feel just as stretched and just as anxious about money as before. Nothing about their happiness actually shifted upward. Their lifestyle simply expanded to swallow the raise whole. Now, picture someone with a far more modest income, who has a small, reliable emergency fund, spends deliberately on a handful of experiences each year, and regularly does small, generous things for the people around them. They're not wealthy by any conventional measure, but they report consistently higher day-to-day contentment than plenty of people earning 2 or 3 times as much. The difference between these two people isn't the number on their paycheck. It's what each of them did with the money once it arrived. That's really the entire argument of this episode in miniature. So, if money has real limits, does that mean we should ignore it? Not at all. It means we should get smarter about how we use it. Here's what the research on this actually suggests. First, spend on experiences over things. Buying a new gadget gives you a short happiness spike that fades fast as the new thing becomes the normal thing. Experiences, trips, concerts, dinners with people you love tend to hold their happiness value longer, partly because they become stories and memories, not objects that just sit there getting old. Second, spend on other people. This sounds almost too simple, but it's one of the most consistently replicated findings in this entire field. People who spend money on others, gifts, treating a friend, donating to something they care about,
report a bigger happiness boost than people who spend the same amount on themselves. Generosity, it turns out, comes with a return on investment that selfish spending just doesn't match. Third, buy back your time. If you can afford it, outsourcing a task you genuinely dislike, paying for delivery on a brutal week, hiring help for a chore you dread, often produces more happiness per dollar than buying another physical item. Time you get to spend on things you actually care about is worth more than most of us price it at. Fourth, pay for experiences in advance and savor the anticipation. Booking a trip months ahead doesn't just get you the trip later, it gives you weeks of enjoyable anticipation leading up to it. That waiting period is its own quiet source of happiness, which is part of why planning something to look forward to can lift your mood well before it actually happens. Fifth, protect a financial cushion before you upgrade your lifestyle. Before chasing the next lifestyle upgrade, building even a modest safety net tends to buy more peace of mind than the upgrade would. Security beats luxury almost every time, especially early on. Sixth, notice when you're spending to keep up rather than to actually enjoy something. Before a purchase, a useful gut check is simply asking, am I buying this because I want it or because of what it signals to someone else? That single question quietly diffuses a huge amount of the comparison trap we talked about earlier. None of this requires being wealthy. These are strategies that work at almost any income level because they're less about how much money you have and more about where you choose to point it.
Money absolutely matters for happiness. Pretending otherwise is naive, and anyone telling you money is irrelevant to well-being usually isn't the one stressed about rent. Financial security reduces real chronic suffering, and that's not a small thing. It's actually one of the most reliable boosts to happiness that exists. But money has a ceiling on what it can fix. Past a certain point, more income mostly just raises your baseline expenses, unless you're intentional about how you use it. It can't buy you meaning, close relationships, or a sense of purpose. Those come from somewhere else entirely, and no salary substitutes for them. The smartest move isn't chasing more money for its own sake, and it isn't pretending money doesn't matter either. It's using whatever money you have on the things that actually move the needle, reducing stress, buying back your time, investing in your relationships, and occasionally spending on experiences and other people instead of just more stuff. So here's something simple to try this week. Before your next non-essential purchase, pause for 10 seconds and ask yourself honestly, is this going to make my life genuinely better, or am I just trying to feel something for a moment? That single pause, repeated often enough, might do more for your happiness than any raise ever could.